Page 328, When I Was Just a Lad. For those who are thinking this chapter would be about when to hunt, I have an easy answer for you. I'll tell you a little story. When I was getting close to the day of my marriage, my pastor, who just happened to be my dad, asked me a question. He asked if I had any questions about marriage before the wedding. I said I was not sure when or how much you're supposed to do that thing that married people do. He did not even pause. He said, do it as often as you possibly can. That is my answer for when to take your dogs bobcat hunting, as often as you possibly can. Bobcats can be found moving any time of day or night. They sometimes seem to go in cycles as to their favorite time to travel and hunt. The most common time for bobcat hunters to start hunting is very early in the morning. But many hot track bobcats have been started in the middle of the afternoon. Sometimes scenting conditions will tell you the only time to hunt is early morning or at night. Other times it's just the opposite. You might find a frozen track in the morning that the dogs cannot work. Then you try it after the sun shines on it and they can work it just fine. But if you have the time to hunt and conditions are anything but impossible, hunt. We've discussed at length where to find bobcats in an earlier chapter. That leaves the more historical and philosophical, when and where, time and space, for this chapter. The time and space continuum, when and where. Let's review some important concepts from a different angle. Consider the time-space continuum. Consider relative speed in the movement of two objects. Consider the relative power and endurance of the movement of those two objects. Consider the point at which those two objects meet, if they ever do. If they start out with space in between them and they travel in the same direction at the same speed, they will always have space in between them. Can you tell I watched the movie Back to the Future? The trapper. Consider the trapper and the fur-bearing mammal. Two moving objects. The trapper deals in making predictions about the future. He's a bit of a fortune teller. He is placing bets here and there on events yet to happen. The more accurate and educated his predictions, the greater are the encounters between the two moving objects, trapper and fur-bearing mammal. If a man keeps at it, he becomes an old man with fewer traps because he can connect with almost every trap he sets. He has become excellent at predicting the future. The way a trapper gets to encounter the living presence of the fur-bearing animal is by stopping that animal's movement so that the trapper can catch up to it. One object has stopped, therefore the second object can catch up to it. The waiting hunter. We as people are not well equipped to catch up to most wild animals without the aid of tools. The trapper's tool is his trap. The hunter's tool is his gun or bow. The hunter who waits for his game to show relies on the wild animal moving toward him. The hunter in a blind is trying to predict the future also, only now the patience must be his and not that of a waiting trap. If the animal was moving away, the hunter could never stop the animal with his relatively close-range tools. He must stop it so he can catch up to it and physically put his hands on it. But he waits patiently for the animal to move toward him. When the animal gets close enough, he then uses his tools to reach out to the animal and stop it. When the animal is stopped, he can move toward it and encounter it. This fulfills the ancient need and attraction of man to animal. The tracker. We who use dogs as tools use them to stop our game in the same way a trapper uses his traps to stop the game. But the traps are like the hunter who waits for the animal to move close. Those of us who put in on the trail of an animal use a much more physical approach. Our tools, our dogs, are used to move toward the game. They move along the scent trail left by the animal. They have to move faster than the animal is moving. They eventually catch up to the animal by moving faster than the animal. This happens easily if the animal chooses to stop of its own will. He might stop on the ground. He might stop in a hole or tree. He made the choice to stop. If he does, the dogs easily catch up to him. Their average speed has eventually exceeded the average speed of the animal. This catching up happens with difficulty if the animal chooses to continue its movement away from the dogs. And still, the dogs must have an average speed which is greater than the average speed of the game. If the average speed of the dogs is the same as the average speed of the game, the two never meet. Also, if the average speed of the game is greater than the average speed of the dogs, the distance is increased and the two never meet. Reeling in the timeline. As the trapper deals in the future, we who use cold-nosed tracking dogs deal in the past. We stand at the point of an event in history. It is the history of movement. The thing that moved left evidence of that movement. We ask our dogs to follow that evidence faster than it happened. We ask our dogs to perform an act of time travel. We ask them to grab a hold of that event in history and move us quickly toward the present. The dogs are our time travel machines. If they have enough fuel in their flux capacitor, they take us from the past event of a passing animal to the very living presence of that animal right here, right now. We've engaged in time travel from the past to the present. It happened because our dog repeated the history of that animal faster than the animal originally lived it. It is E equals MC squared. It is a remarkable event, an event so remarkable and exhilarating that most who experience it will want to experience it again. Now, with some individual game animals, when the present moment is approached from behind, it becomes very difficult to cross that final barrier into now. Sometimes we need special tools to get this barrier crossed. We need dogs that are highly gifted and highly motivated. Otherwise, the average speed of the game and the average speed of the dogs are equaled or moved into the game's favor, and the two never meet. The steel frame between dog and cat. Consider a motorcycle. The front wheel is the present. The back wheel is the past. The front wheel is our game animal. The back wheel is our dogs, our tool for catching the front wheel and stopping it. But we have a problem. We have a problem because the back wheel can never catch the front wheel. Something is holding the two apart. In the case of the motorcycle, it is the frame of the bike. But this same phenomenon happens frequently in the hound world. We need to analyze the frame. What is the thing holding the dogs at a distance from their game? Now, with the motorcycle, the power is in the rear wheel. So let's hold on to that image of our cat race. When the cat chooses the space between. If we use one side of a front wheel drive car, you can see the power is in the front. The rear wheel is being pulled along by the front. I believe this happens very frequently in the world of bobcat hunting. The distance is there because the bobcat wants it to be. If things get a little uncomfortable, the cat just increases the distance again until he feels comfortable to continue his all-day cat trot. The only solution to it is to reverse things. You must have more power in the rear wheel than in the front. So we breed dogs that are more powerful than the cat. When the dog chooses the space between. So now we have reversed it, yet there is still the frame. The power is in the rear, but the rear stays the same distance from the front. Why? I believe the reasons are genetic. Something in that dog's genetic makeup tells that dog not to catch that cat. Most dogs will not have to think about that. They will just naturally not catch it. They don't have to think about the steel frame. It is just there. Why? One reason may be the strain of foxhound that the dog's hound blood comes from. Wolves and coyotes and foxes do not have the steel frame between them and their prey. That steel frame was inserted by smart breeders over centuries of expensive breeding. We still have dogs that have ancient genes screaming, "Whatever you do, don't catch that thing. The king will have your head if you do." These same dogs were bred not to bay, not to kill, not to bark in a hole, and not to bark up a tree. We have done great things in reversing all this, but remnants of it keep some dogs from closing the final gap. These amazing breeders magnified or diminished whatever traits needed to get these desired results. Hounds are about as far from the natural wolf traits as any dog we can think of. Another reason for having power but not using it may be learned. Some dogs may have learned that catching a bobcat is painful. Dogs without a high pain tolerance and without the desire for confrontation with dangerous game will not close the gap. This may even go hand in hand with dogs that have enough intelligence to be good bobcat dogs. I know of more than one dog that was culled as a bear dog but made an excellent bobcat dog. They were culled from hunting bear because they would not completely close the gap on a bear. Were they too smart for that? Maybe. In the areas where cats always climb trees, this dog would not need to stay away from the cat to avoid pain. That painful ambush on the ground would not happen with the unseen tree climbing bobcat. In this environment, the smart dog with a low pain tolerance and low desire for confrontation can make a top bobcat dog. He is smart, and he is not worried about a big spotted surprise waiting to mount his head. Some dogs that take on more human emotional levels and intelligence might be too smart or too sensitive to be good dogs for hunting dangerous game. I don't know many hunters who will fight barehanded and alone with a bobcat or bear. If they ever did, they never repeated it because it hurts. Extreme thrill seekers. I'm aware that there are extremely intelligent dogs that also just love to fight dangerous game or dangerous livestock. This may be where we will find our great ground-catching bobcat dogs. They must want to close that gap because they want what will happen when they do. The best human athletes have usually shown high levels of intelligence, even in the face of pain. They push through the pain because they have made the decision that the reward is worth the pain. That crash through the barrier between the past and right here, right now, can be a painful one. But some of us will take the pain in face of the rewards waiting. Some people and some dogs just love to fight. They will do it even though it might be painful. In fighting matched opponents, pain decreases as the skill increases. I know this from having been a high school wrestler. But you have to embrace the fight or the skill never comes. Whether genetic or learned or a combination of the two, the answer for the bike frame is found in the big D, desire. Dogs don't close that gap for the same reason people don't, because they don't want to. It might be so deeply hidden in ancient genes that they have no idea why. Or it may be a smart dog that knows exactly why. But in either case, they don't want to catch the bobcat. So in either case, If you want to be successful in catching ground-hugging bobcats, you have to have dogs that have not only the power, but the desire to do it. The motorcycle frame must be removed. There are plenty of dogs with the desire, but not the gifting, which equals power. The bike frame for them is removed, but they do not have the power to close the gap. The cat is choosing the space between. This will not get the job done either. We must find both desire and physical mental gifting in our dogs.